The full moon approaches, and that means there is something dark, something feral. You know to stay away from the woods, for they are not safe. You stay inside, you lock your doors, you ignore the howls that pierce the night. Something terrible lives out there, among the dirt and shadows. A beast, feared and rightly so, for it is a creature of curses and nightmares. The werewolf or lycanthrope is a combination of a man and a beast. Both reside within one body that morphs and changes between that of a human and that of a wolf. It was a fright made famous in Europe, arising alongside the fear of witches. However, it is not only in Europe where werewolves were a common tale. In truth, the concept of werewolves has existed all over the world. In Old High German it was Werwolf. Old Norse had Valulfur as well as Ulfheim. In Scandinavia it was Kvaldulf, meaning evening wolf. In ancient Greek there is the story of Lycan. Even in Asia they've developed their own stories about shapeshifters, believing in were-tigers or were-cats. There were many ways to becoming a werewolf. In Europe and the New World, a common belief was one had to be cursed by a sorcerer or be bitten by another werewolf. In Western and Northern Europe, there was a strong association between paganism and the werewolf, assuming that horrid rituals were being undertaken to create such a creature. However, there were lesser known ways to achieve such a curse. One could drink specially prepared concoctions, or drink from certain magical streams, or even consume the water from a footprint of a wolf. Some believe it was imbued at birth, signified by being born with hair or a birthmark on one's head. You could remove all your clothing and don a belt of a wolf skin, or even sleep outside on a particular Wednesday or Friday. You could even rub a salve over your body. Many stories surround people and wolves. For Vikings in Scandinavia, many powerful warriors, called Ulfhednir, were known to wear wolf hides to channel the spirits of the beast, empowering them on the battlefield. In ancient Greece they had the story of Lycan, a man who had served his own children to Zeus at dinner, supposedly trying to see if Zeus was truly a god. If he was, he'd know that Lycan served his own sons. And so Zeus did, and for punishment he transformed him into a wolf. In France, there were different classifications for werewolves. Loups-garous were typically male and aggressive, while lubins or lupins were often female and calm. In Turkic lore, the werewolf was revered. Wolves were totemic animals, and so a shaman that could transform into one was to be respected, held in high esteem. Their presence in stories and myths is uncanny. They are known and they are feared, but is there any truth to these stories? Accounts of werewolves are not merely fictional. In fact, there have been many documented cases of werewolves across history. Most notably were the werewolf trials, akin to witch trials, where people intended to purge the supposed evil among them. In southern France, during the 17th century, there was the Beast of Gévaudan, an entity that terrorized the small folk, supposedly killing up to 80 people. In 1640, in Greifswald, Germany, there was a werewolf infestation. It became such a concern that the townsfolk melted down their silver to create bullets to kill the beasts. In 1725, there was a boy in Germany found in a forest. He was naked, ate with his hands, and couldn't speak. People considered him a feral creature, and he was captured by King George I, becoming a wonder in London. Yet if we are talking about werewolves, no story is more renowned than that of Peter Stump. A German farmer in the 16th century, he was apparently seen transforming from a wolf into a man. His name, Stump, is a suspected alias, hinting to his lacking of a left hand. People had claimed to have seen a wolf with a missing left forepaw, and had thought it was him. He was brought to trial, where he was persecuted. After being tortured, he admitted to dabbling in the dark arts. He claimed to have killed around 14 people, as well as having incestuous relations with his daughter and a distant relative. He had also claimed to have relations with a succubus that had been sent by the devil. His subsequent execution was gruesome. he was beaten and crippled upon a wheel, flayed, and beheaded. His daughter and relative were also killed for being in association with Stump. His head was raised upon a pole, an attempt to ward away people from dabbling in the dark nature of werewolves. It was the story of Peter Stump that truly drove fear into people regarding werewolves. Whether Peter was truly guilty, that is unknown. Some believe he was innocent and the entire ordeal was a political stunt to promote Catholicism, as there was internal warring between Protestants and Catholics. Regardless of whether he was guilty, it must be noted that many accused of being werewolves are now assumed to have been serial killers. Being a werewolf was a way to explain their deplorable crimes. In European mythos, there were supposed traits that can mark a person as a werewolf. Things such as having curved fingernails, having both eyebrows meet, or simply having a swinging stride. One could also remove a chunk of flesh, and if one was cursed, they'd find fur underneath. Furthermore, the process of changing between forms was said to be exhausting, and one could be exposed through a lack of energy or sudden depressive attitudes. As for the transformation, the tall anthropomorphic concept modern media has created was an uncommon notion. Typically, the wolf was a wolf in shape and form, except they were often missing tails and had human eyes. An old Swedish account said a werewolf walked with one hind leg raised to appear like it had a tail. Some have taken a scientific approach to the werewolf, exploring medical lycanthropy. They've argued that people accused of being werewolves could be suffering from conditions such as hypertrichosis, which produces excessive body hair, or congenital porphyria, which change the body and could provoke a psychosis for someone to think they're a wolf. Rabies and Down syndrome have also been suggested. However, it must be noted that these illnesses were too rare to explain the widespread accounts of werewolves. There were many supposed cures for being a werewolf. In medieval Europe, there were medicines such as wolfsbane, exorcisms, or even surgical options. However, many answers often resulted in the victim dying. Ancient Greeks and Romans forced people to do intense physical activity, thinking to purge the werewolf through bodily exertion. In the German lowlands, there was a simpler notion, such as saying their Christian name 3 times. The Danes thought you could simply berate someone. In the modern day, there are a few iconic associations with the werewolf. Most nobly is that a full moon provokes the primal transformation. However, that was not an iconic part of the mythos until the movie Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943. In fact, wolves don't have much of a relationship with the moon. Yet it cannot so easily be discredited. A study done in Australia's Calvary Mater Newcastle Hospital between 2008 and 2009 discovered that 23% of aggressive behaviors occurred during the full moon. The full moon may not trigger the change, but it could provoke the bloodthirsty nature of the werewolf. There is also the belief that werewolves are powerful creatures. They are stronger, wilder, and more dangerous than both man and wolf. Many depictions show them as having supernatural strength, speed, as well as heightened feral urges. Fighting a werewolf is not easy, but one reliable way to slay the beast is to use silver. This idea arose from the beast of Gévaudan, who had been shot and killed by a silver bullet. Thus, when werewolves became a threat, people's natural instinct was to use silver, for it had slain the beast of Gévaudan. History has shown that people are obsessed with werewolves. Whether any of the accounts or mythos hold substance, it is hard to tell. But even today, centuries after the legends arose, we find ourselves fascinated with the man-wolf combination. It is one of the primal and universal tales that have been told. The werewolf is a mysterious beast. It varies in shapes and sizes and its behaviors, but one thing is for certain. If you ever go into the forest, it may be advisable that you have silver on your person. The creatures that lurk in the shadows may be far more dangerous than you realize.